Webiters, next we will discuss the biggest challenges in modern media. Let's give a warm welcome to participants from BBC, CNBC, NetInfo's Executive Director, and the CEO of Darik Radio.
Hello. Yay. Fireworks.
Hi.
Hello.
Pleasure to meet you.
Afua and I met earlier.
We did.
Hi.
It's always fireworks when I come out here. I'm still not used to it. And thank you so much for joining me. We are going to discuss the information crisis, the biggest challenges in modern media. This is going to be a huge topic. And Michael Peter, CEO of Euronews Global, is going to be joining us virtually, which is very exciting. So the media is facing a myriad of challenges such as censorship, political and economic pressure, intimidation, job insecurity, and attacks on the protection of journalists' resources. We're moving towards an increasingly digital, mobile, and social media environment with more intense competition for attention. And this also presents many challenges for legacy forms of media like newspapers and TV, who must also move to adopt a digital format. So, here with me to discuss these challenges is this lovely panel before me. Leisha Santorelli, news desk editor of BBC News Content. Hello.
Hello.
Again.
I know. I feel like I've just been living on the stage, but it's been great. I'm having a fantastic time in beautiful Bulgaria for the first time.
It's been a great day, hasn't it? And more to come. And also joining me, I have Alexander Varov, Revenue and Product Portfolio Director at NetInfo. Hello. Thank you for joining us. And then Hristo Hristov, CEO at Darik Radio. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And Michael Peter, CEO of Euronews Global, will be joining us via video link. There he is. Michael, can you hear me?
Absolutely. Can you hear me?
Wonderful, we can. The joy of modern technology. Okay, amazing. So, panel, we have 25 minutes, so let's delve into it. And of course, everybody, you can follow us on social media. We are at Webit. Please use the hashtag Webit if you want to discuss anything that we're talking about here. So, during the past 2 years, panel, and obviously COVID-19 pandemic, what were your biggest challenges and achievements? That's a big question. And what were the most important changes and transformations in media that you observed through this period of time? Now, Leisha, I'm going to put that to you first. I did a lot of work with BBC, not with you, unfortunately, over that time, but I was personally amazed at how quickly television moved to using Skype and Zoom, where it just didn't really do that before. You know, occasionally you had your guests down the line, but usually it was in person. And what I thought was revolutionary about that is that all of a sudden the media industry, and I can speak for the UK, opened up to a whole load of people that it hadn't been opened up to before.
I'd agree with that assessment. I think that through the day we've been talking about how the pandemic has accelerated a lot of trends and a change in consumer habits, and that includes the way that we work. And so many companies, including the BBC, and specifically within news, were very quick to adapt to hybrid forms of working, because within 24/7 news organizations, there are certain critical functions that you just cannot do from home. So you would have to go into the office during lockdowns as a key frontline worker in the UK, for example, to go into a gallery. My husband's in the audience, so he had to go there, but I was working from home the entire time. I've never spent so much time on Zoom in my life.
Wow.
I'm very happy to be here in person and not be on Zoom. Sorry, Michael, I know you are on Zoom and couldn't join us. And I think that is really testament, again, to how firms have been forced to adapt, but also found new ways to work and realized that their priorities and certain business models had to shift.
And that is it, isn't it? And Michael, I'll come to you actually. Euronews, a huge organization. How did your business model have to shift in this time?
So many things to say about COVID, so as we don't have a lot of time, try to be short. First of all, beyond all the, of course, elements of like people not being able to do, to be there, etc. We have to precisely remember that at one point it was extremely critical in all the newsrooms, in the hard newsrooms, when we had to still deliver the news, even in a better quantity, that because everyone was looking at all of us. I'm not speaking for Euronews only. We had at the beginning, I don't know if you remember, a very, very we were very scared about the fact that we could just not deliver them because of all these people who were going one by one, to catch the COVID. And it was, remember, a very critical time at that time. The business model in a general way has changed fundamentally from everything, production, everything. One of the things I can just mention here again for sake of timing is especially, for us, continental media like BBC World News, CNN International, and all the others, our majority of advertisers were people coming from the travel tourism, and of course, everything being cut, we had to completely change this ponderation, of these people coming from this industry towards other industries. So this is just one of the examples, but there are so many others that we don't have the time to speak about all of them.
Thank you for that. Hristo, I'm going to come to you. What were your most important changes and transformations, and perhaps your biggest achievements for the radio station at that time?
Yeah. Well, for us in Bulgaria, it was a little bit different than whole Europe and the UK for sure. And reason for that being is that okay, the COVID wave came, it sort of faded away. Now we're expecting the new one in autumn, but I presume it won't be so serious. But when the war started, we're a country which is at the first, basically, barrier towards Europe regarding, the war. So we have a maritime border with Ukraine, with Russia. So we're at the very outer ring of EU when it comes to when it comes to the war. And what this led is actually a very strong hybrid war happening in this market. So we have to deal with COVID, which is still here, although fading away. We have to deal with the war, where we have to represent the different personal stories, because that's what media is all about. It's about storytelling and sharing, all what's going on in the world around us. And at the same time, we have to deal with this propaganda war, which is going on in the local market during what is now around 18 months of political crisis. So we've had many elections over the last. Yeah, I see a smile. Yeah, it's so it's a very challenging environment, and what we had to adapt very quickly is to find. So finding the right balance became super hard, because it's not so easy to understand who is playing with who on what side, how to report on that, so that you don't even distribute an information which is fake coming from Ukraine, for example, because you have propaganda from both sides of the war. And I think our biggest advantage as a media group is that we managed to stay how to say, a little bit neutral on one hand, but on the other hand have a very strong stance against the war and against the conflict. So it's very hard to be neutral in such situation.
Yeah, definitely. Alexander, we'll come back to Ukraine. That's a topic I want to unpack a bit further. But I just wanted to ask you about your biggest challenges and achievements during the pandemic in your organization and personally.
Yeah, Yeah, we share the same market with Hristo, yeah, and maybe the same problems. Of course, the first problem was the revenue decrease. Yeah, we all hit small revenue decrease in the beginning of the pandemic, and this required us to change the workflow, to change the investments in content. But this is something we done on easy. I mean, you know, the models we have brought, it wasn't very difficult to change the workflow inside. The real challenge was the unprecedented confrontation between the people. That's what I believe was the biggest challenge, and we were challenged by our users, by our visitors, and public about that, because the expectations at some point were to get a sight, to get a clear sight on some battle here, and everyone sees the battle his way. And, for us, being a national TV network, being the biggest news ecosystem in digital, was very important to keep us in our identity, to keep us in the middle. And that was the greatest success we did it. Yeah. And we prove it now with the war, because the situation again requires, and we see a lot of small medias getting political view on the situation. We are not alone. Yeah. We have to meet the general audience interest with people with different political views, and we become even better to keep these people in front of our devices. Yeah.
Leisha, you know, the war in Ukraine has brought a huge disruption to so many people's lives in so many different ways, from soaring prices. You know, it's such a dominant, or was such a dominant news story. It's fallen down the agenda somewhat. But how do you, at the BBC and also just without the BBC, deal with misinformation and information and handling all the information that is out there? Because, like Hristo so rightly said, there's propaganda from both sides.
I think that I saw someone post on Twitter that we're living in a time which she described as a global dumpster fire. Basically, there's just so much fragmentation and chaos in the world, war, global red-hot inflation, and so many other issues, that there is a sense of news fatigue setting in. And there are studies, most recently by the Reuters Institute, that shows, again, that people are now engaging in things like news avoidance. And this also extends to the Ukraine war, where we saw a huge peak and spike of interest in when it first broke out in February, and we've seen it kind of taper off, but that doesn't lessen the importance of what's happening. And as the BBC's Director General has said, that truth is the first casualty of war, and I think that what the Russian invasion of Ukraine has really highlighted, as you have shared, is that there is a demand for clear, balanced and impartial reporting and journalism. We have some very brave journalists at BBC News still on the ground in Ukraine, including in areas of heavy fighting. And we have, our output has really focused in challenging systemic propaganda, a lot of it stemming from the Kremlin. And so we have seen it become a lot more difficult to do trusted independent journalism. This is because Russia has cracked down on independent journalists. They have introduced laws, actually, that restricts reporting of the war, and they could deem it fake news and throw you into jail. We saw our Russian language service banned. And so the BBC, which I'm proud to say, has found ways to continue supporting reporting in Ukrainian and Russian. So, for example, we have maintained 2 shortwave frequencies in Ukraine and Russia for 4 hours of world service English per day. And again, we've received extra emergency funding from the British government. And this just is to continue to support that trusted, impartial, balanced, independent journalism to counter disinformation and propaganda.
Michael, how do you at Euronews try and negate misinformation and propaganda? And what are the most important messages do you think you would like to share about the situation in Ukraine right now?
So this situation is quite sensitive for us, as we are I think the only media in the world to have a full TV edition in Russian and still being broadcasted. I mean, we were broadcasted everywhere in Russia before the war started. So we have been banned from Russia like a few weeks ago. I think that I'm always saying, in this kind of crisis, because we are extremely watched in Russia, like in Ukraine, and in this kind of moments, and we had the same moment in 2016, I mean, during the last, which was not a war at that timing, or it could be a war, but smaller war or crisis, is that if you want to be at the middle, you never, ever satisfy any party. I think that such an event makes the countries, the regulations, the authorities, not speaking about the audience itself, very polarized. And we cannot blame that. I mean, we cannot put side by side, kind of ethical media practices and feelings of people who are living a war, and this becomes a bit difficult. And what I'm always saying is that in this kind of case, what's important for us and for the publication director that is here is always to try to receive critics, but to receive critics in the same way from the both sides. Of course, as a European, as a European born, then comes the problem for a media like us, who of course is all views by essence, which is independent, which is neutral, objective, if we can be so by essence. We still stick to values, we still stick to European values, and there is a huge difficulty to equally respect our DNA, the blood, the values we have, and the positioning with the war. So from the beginning, we always use the right vocabulary, the right words, even knowing that we were extremely watched in Russia. We knew we would be banned one day. It's what happens. But in the meantime, when we are banned for Russia, we have received equally a lot of criticism from Ukraine, because of course every party is expecting you, I would say, not to be any more neutral, but to be somewhere polarized. And again, I'm not judging it. It's not a judgmental positioning. I'm trying to understand the situation, and the professional, let's say, standards and the reality of living a war sometimes are very hard to be reconciled.
Thank you for that. Alexander, I'm going to come to you now. How do you deal with the misinformation, disinformation? And again, what are the most important messages you would like to share about the current situation?
From editorial point of view, okay, we have our technologies. I mean, editorial technologies, and I'm sure our teams are on the bright side. I mean, it's not possible. Okay, it's possible, but they're very careful, and disinformation can breach our channels. They have their tactics, but the hybrid war is very shoddy thing. I mean, you are not going against a news event. You're going against an opinion, against a muck created in social media. There is lots of people that are just thrown in that, and they can't find a way to go away, and they even don't know that two sides. I mean, we are from the bright sides, the public media, we all know each other, and we have some standards. After that comes the social media influencers. Everything is clear there, you know who is who, you see the different points of view, the different forms of expression, but after that comes the shoddy space of one-on-one messaging groups, Facebook groups, all kinds of, non-control spread information. And this is the real problem. And the real question is how you deal with small and deep change in attitude instead of confronting fake news. Because the fake news are not the problem. I mean, the fake news, they're part of the work with these people. And here what helped us, be careful, be empathic to these people. We have to understand these people, they have their minds, they have their questions, and what helped us to be oriented to them also, and to serve them with alternative information. Yeah.
Thank you for that. And Hristo, the last question, I'll put that same question to you.
Well, I totally agree with Alex. It's just there is a question which we cannot find the right answer, and it is the following. Okay, let's say fake profiles on social media, get it. Fake news sites, we get it. But how does the media act when you have, let's say, a voice of disinformation in the parliament? Mm-hmm. So if you're powerful enough to put, let's say, into the parliament someone who is spreading disinformation, or let's say increasing the propaganda machine, and so do you give voice to that parliamentary group? Mm-hmm. Do you take an editorial decision to limit that voice? This, to be honest, is a problem that we're facing here, mm-hmm. and we're not entirely sure how to deal with it. Mm. Because the moment you get, the moment you're into parliament, you have representation, then all of the media spotlight is on you. Mm. And so you get a super free pass to enter and to express your thoughts, which are maybe yours, but maybe not so yours.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So moving on from COVID in Ukraine and moving forward, what are the most important innovations that you're using and investing in? And how can AI and Metaverse and Web3 be implemented in the workflow, and how will they change the face of modern media? And Hristo, I'll come to you on this one.
That's on the positive side. So what we believe is that Web3 can really help the readers and the listeners and the viewers become stakeholders. So you know, blockchain technology, and now when there is when you're in the down market, it's actually a very good time to build on it, and it's the way we see it. It's an interesting case to create stakeholders out of your viewers. Now, having that said, you have to be very careful who do you invite to the party, because once you distribute the, let's say, wealth and decision making and whatever, do you distribute the editorial policy? Do you make the audience choose what they want to watch or they don't want to watch? So on one hand, you can get closer to the audience by inviting them to become decision makers. On the other hand, you have to be super careful not to damage your, your root business and why you are our media outlet. So I think it's very exciting times up ahead.
Yeah. And the same question to you, Leisha. What are the most important innovations that you're using in investing, and how can AI, Metaverse, and Web3 be implemented in the workflow and change the face of modern media?
Well, I think it's okay for me to say that the BBC is really doubling down on what we call digital first, because number one, we see that consumer habits and media consumption habits have changed. And in addition, you mentioned social media and TikTok and the plethora of misinformation and fake news on there. we know that it's a priority to reach young people under the age of 30, as well as underserved communities. So by underserved communities and audiences, I mean those that we haven't traditionally been able to penetrate. So it could be the Black, Asian, and ethnic minority communities. It could be those who come from more impoverished backgrounds. And that, again, comes from having a diverse representation of views and thoughts within the newsroom. And also making sure that we don't give too much power to platforms like Facebook. It's about investing in research and design and engineering into our own news products like the BBC iPlayer, where you can watch on demand live or watching it back BBC News Channel or BBC One, BBC Two, or an arts program. And then also because there's a big boom in audio demand for podcasts. We also have something called BBC Sounds. So again, it's about bringing the audiences, and especially trying to reach the younger audiences, to come into a trusted news source on our platforms, on our terms.
Michael, I'm going to put the same question to you as well. What are the most important innovations that you guys are using and investing in? And how can things like AI and Metaverse and Web3 be implemented into the workflow and change the face of modern media?
I think that's maybe say something a bit controversial, but I think that's okay, beyond Web 3.0, and I think we have to wait a bit, to see exactly what will happen with the blockchain and how it will impact worlds. I'm even not speaking about Metaverse, which is, I think, a bit too early stage for a news media organization like us to really understand the real impacts. We could say millions of things about it, but I think that there is something that is extremely interesting for us, where the profession we have to think about, and I would make a kind of parallel between what is already existing now in a lot of US law firms. It's about AI. I think that AI could be an extraordinary chance for the industry, like it happens now again in the law firms industry, to enhance the quality of our contents. And this is where we go through a bit of maybe controversial positioning, but I strongly believe that AI could be used, especially in a media like Euronews, which is based on facts, could be used a lot to write straightforward news stories with AI. And this will not replace journalism by robots. This will allow the journalists in all the newsroom to focus on where they really can add value. For the time being, the major problem of news organization, like all of us, I'm speaking about the worldwide ones, is that we have many challenges. We need to spread our costs in different ways. We need to address different offers on different platforms, on different modes of consumptions, with different user experiences. And I think that one of the problems we have is that we need, in a world of hyper competition, we need to give value to the consumers. And I think that it's very hard because we still need to deliver the factual basis news. And I think that if we could use, all of us, AI, to take out of the volume of time of the journalists to deliver straightforward news, and especially for organizations like us who are speaking in 17 languages to people on the planet, it would help our newsroom to focus on where they can add value, and originality could be then revolutionary. So this is a personal thought about this.
Thank you for that. Alexander, what do you think modern media needs to do in general in order to improve customer experience, to deal with the information crisis, and to serve modern society in the best possible way?
You know, again, there is a global trends and local problems. Yeah, we know the best engagement goes in platforms, the worst monetization is there. Yeah, and our biggest problem here is locally still the biggest platforms are not allowed for premium monetization, for example, on different level. TikTok is totally closed, Facebook is closed, Google are good in that. And that's why we as a media, we have to decide how to engage our users. And that's why we prefer to engage them in our ecosystem, in our own players, our own platforms, and our setup, entire setup, including the content production, the content distribution is organized to drive these people to our channels. But we see we have to develop more, and we're doing it more for social media, and that's why we're jumping on this global trend to try to centralize the data and to control the experience through data centralizations. And that's why we are going for lots of first-party data using DMPs, using different ways to control the touch points, native ads, different patent free exchange, traffic exchanges. And what makes difference here, we see there is a different personas. There are people that are using us only in social media. There are people using us in set of different screens and devices, mobile plus big screen and things like that. And the only way to control the experience is first to know the platforms, to get the best integration there. That is difficult and not cheap, and second, to control the first-party data and to use their machine learning and maybe artificial intelligence someday. From our point of view, as black box, not as internal development. Yeah.
Thank you very much for that. And just like that, we're out of time. Thank you so much to our wonderful panel. Let's give them a round of applause.